The Airbus A340-500 is arguably one of the best-looking airliners ever designed. It's an ultra-long-range version of Airbus's most popular quad-jet, and was launched at the 1997 Paris Air Show along with the larger A340-600. Unfortunately, it didn't sell terribly well, and only 34 airframes were ever built. However, some might not know that 2 of those actually flew with Canada's flag carrier. Air Canada operated the A340-500 for just 3 short years, between 2004 and 2007. Now that time frame alone is a little bit unusual for an airline like Air Canada, who tends to fly their planes for 20 or even 30 years. So why did Air Canada fly the A340-500 and for such a short period of time? Well, according to Air Canada, the story starts back in the 1990s, as it became time to consider a replacement for their original 747 classics. Ultimately, it was decided to purchase a mix of Airbus A330s and A340s to replace the 747s, with the idea that the A340s would be a more appropriate size for many of Air Canada's longer international routes. The A330s, on the other hand, would be best suited to shorter transatlantic flights to Western Europe, something they still do today. Air Canada's first A340, a smaller -300 model, was delivered in 1995, while the first A330s joined the fleet in 1999. In 1997, Air Canada became the launch customer for the A340-500 when they ordered 2 of the type for their ultra-long-range capabilities, along with 3 of the larger A340-600. Those A340-600s, though, would never materialize, and the order was deferred on more than one occasion. Eventually, they were cancelled outright in 2008, 10 years after the order was placed. Nevertheless, the A340-500s did join the fleet, but only after production delays and Air Canada's financial troubles in 2003 caused deliveries to be pushed back. Because of that, Emirates became the A340-500 launch customer instead. Air Canada's 2 aircraft would eventually be delivered in June and July of 2004, and were assigned fin numbers 951 and 952. They were each configured with 267 seats in a 2-class layout, with 42 seats in Executive First, or Business Class as it's known now, and 225 seats in Hospitality Service, or Economy Class. The first revenue flight for the A340-500 took place on July 3, 2004, between Montreal and Toronto. As the 747-400 flew its final flight in October that year, the A340-500s took over its longer international services. The 2 aircraft would primarily fly non-stop between Toronto and Hong Kong, as well as Toronto to Shanghai and Toronto to Delhi, among other routes. According to a former Air Canada pilot with 18 years of experience flying Airbus aircraft, the A340 was a treat to fly, having advanced aerodynamics and fly-by-wire control systems that afforded precise handling qualities. There were 2 A340 models that we operated, the 300 and the 500. Airbus described the 300 as a well-tuned quad, which meant it was slightly underpowered for an aircraft its size and weight, similar to driving a large car with a V6 engine versus a V8, less powerful but providing better fuel economy. The 500 was the V8, a real performer with much more powerful Rolls-Royce engines and greater fuel capacity. Both were exciting to fly. The A340-500 could fly for over 16 hours with a full passenger load, and with 4 engines it was exempt from the restrictions of ETOPS. However, those 4 engines would actually prove to be a bit of a disadvantage, as it meant higher maintenance expenses and increased fuel consumption. So, in November of 2005, Air Canada ordered 18 Boeing 777s, with options for a further 18. This initial order consisted of 8 777-300ERs and 6 of the smaller 777-200LR, with the other 4 777 models to be determined at a later date. With a lower operating cost as compared to the A340, the 777s were the perfect replacement at the time. The 200LR would take over these longer distance routes, like Toronto to Hong Kong, and do so at a 12% lower seat mile cost. According to a 2019 Air Canada Polar Operations presentation, the A340s could be somewhat susceptible to fuel freeze issues on the polar routes. With the introduction of the 777s, the different fuel tank layout made that much less of a concern, and having more than 2 aircraft also allowed for much more flexibility. The first 777-300ERs were delivered to Air Canada in early 2007, and the 200LRs began joining the fleet later that summer. As the 777s were introduced to Air Canada's long-haul network, including the Toronto to Hong Kong route in August of 2007, the end was in sight for the A340s. So, in November 2007, the A340-500s were officially retired from the fleet. As they were still owned by Air Canada, Fin 951 and 952 were then leased to TOM Airlines of Brazil, where they continued to fly until 2011. The two aircraft would remain on Air Canada's balance sheet until they were, and I quote, disposed of in 2014. Fin 951 was scrapped in Rio de Janeiro in 2015, while Fin 952 has been stored in Spain since 2018. With Air Canada's final Airbus A340-500 flight on November 20, 2008, this era of four-engined long-haul airliners came to a close. Ultimately, the A340-500 was not as appealing to airlines as Airbus had hoped for, and this 3-year period with Air Canada seemed to prove that. For what it was, though, it served its purpose at the airline until the 777s came along, and to this day, it remains a unique part of Air Canada's history. Thank you very much for watching this video about Air Canada's Airbus A340-500. A special thank you once again to my friend Mark Brandon for those A340-500 clips, and to Chris Sands for letting me use those fantastic pictures. I had also reached out to Air Canada for some more information regarding the plane, and they were very helpful, so a big thank you to them as well. Otherwise though, if you enjoyed the video, please do leave a like, subscribe, consider becoming a channel member, and I will see you next time.